is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
In the headlines, from lives once lost in darkness to hearts renewed in faith, hundreds in Pangasinan embrace a new beginning through baptism and the message of Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy. Today, see their inspiring stories of transformation and hope. New flames erupt in the Middle East. Israel strikes Yemen's capital, targeting the presidential palace and key Houthi sites. Later, we'll be hearing the latest on this dangerous escalation and what it means for the region. Heartbreaking images from Gaza revealed children suffering severe malnutrition. Hospitals struggle to save young lives and shortages of food and medicine, exposing the devastating human cost of the ongoing war. Tensions flare over Ukraine's future as Russia accuses the West of blocking peace talks. Moscow questions Kiev's leadership even as Washington steps up diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict. A rare moment of humanity amid war. Russia and Ukraine carry out one of their largest prisoner swaps in months, reuniting soldiers and civilians with their families after years of captivity. Hundreds of Venezuelans respond to President Maduro's call, joining the Bolivarian militia as tensions rise with U.S. forces approaching the coastline. Over in the UK, a major music festival is facing backlash. An Irish band had their sound cut after waving a Palestinian flag on stage, and now more bands are pulling out in the protest. The controversy has sparked a bigger debate. Was it censorship or just festival rules? And history made it to US Open. Filipina tennis star Eala stuns the crowd with a comeback win against the 14th seed. Her first ever Grand Slam main draw victory. From junior champion to the big stage, Eala says this one's for the books. I'm Angel Pastor. Newsline World starts now. Tensions over Ukraine's future are once again at the center of international debate, this time with Moscow pointing fingers at the West and questioning Kiev's leadership, even as Washington steps up its role in ongoing peace efforts. Franco Baranda has the latest.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has accused Western countries of deliberately undermining efforts to reach a peaceful resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. In a media interview, Lavrov claimed that Western leaders are looking for excuses to prevent negotiations, placing blame on both Europe and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Против России. Просто ищут повод для того, чтобы переговоры не допустить, и хотят, чтобы это произошло не по их вине, не по вине Зеленского, который тоже артачится и какие-то условия выдвигает, требует немедленной встречи с Путиным, независимо ни от чего. Попытка нарушить тот процесс, который, в общем-то, был заложен президентами Путиным и Трампом, который дал очень неплохие результаты.
According to Lavrov, Russia's position in talks does not depend on Zelensky's demands, but is instead focused on lifting restrictions on Russian culture and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. He also questioned Zelensky's legitimacy, suggesting Ukraine's leadership no longer has constitutional authority. The comments come as U.S. President Donald Trump met with Ukrainian and European leaders in Washington to follow up on agreements reached earlier this month at the Alaska summit. On the same day, Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov announced that Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin had agreed to explore raising the level of Moscow-Kiev representation in the future peace talks. Lavrov insisted that Moscow and Washington share the goal of ending the war, but accused European leaders of framing the conflict strictly in terms of military victory and defeat.
We want peace in Ukraine. President Trump wants peace in Ukraine. The reaction to Anchorage meeting, the gathering in Washington of these European representatives, and what they were doing after Washington indicates that they don't want peace. They say we cannot allow defeat of Ukraine. We cannot allow Russia to win. They speak in these terms: win, defeat, and so on and so forth.
The war in Ukraine began in February 2022 when Russia launched a military offensive after recognizing the independence of the self-declared Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. Moscow claimed Kiev had failed to honor the 2014 Minsk agreements, while also demanding Ukraine remain neutral and outside NATO. Ukraine denounced the action as an invasion. President Zelensky declared martial law and ordered a general mobilization. Since then, the European Union and the United States have imposed multiple rounds of sanctions against Moscow while continuing military and financial support for Kiev. Reporting for Newsline World, Franco Baranda, SMNI News.
Ukraine's future is contested both on the battlefield and at the negotiating table as Moscow defends its strikes and Kiev rallies allies for security guarantees. Details of this report from Almar Forzuelo.
Any security guarantees for Ukraine must be built on consensus. This was what Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov emphasized in a media interview on Sunday, rejecting claims that Moscow seeks veto power. He accused European countries of double standards, pointing to their role in what he called the anti-Russian coup of 2014 and their continued supply of weapons to Kiev.
I never said that Russia must have a veto on security guarantees, but security guarantees must be subject to consensus.
Lavrov added that Ukraine has the right to exist, provided it respects the wishes of those who voted in favor of Russian culture in referendums held in Donbass, Novorossiya, and Crimea. The minister also claimed Russia's strikes are directed only at military or industrial sites tied to Ukraine's defense industry, denying accusations of civilian targeting. Meanwhile, Kyiv says Russia's forces attacked an American-owned electronics plant, killing and injuring civilians. Russia's defense ministry reported 6 coordinated precision strikes on Ukraine's military-industrial facilities and energy infrastructure just last week. On Ukraine's Independence Day on Sunday, 24th of August, President Volodymyr Zelensky vowed that the war must end with guaranteed security for his country.
Всі разом ми працюємо, щоб завершення цієї війни означало для України отримання гарантованої безпеки, щоб ані війна, ані загроза війни не залишились у спадок нашим дітям.
Zelensky found support from Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who announced over $1 billion in new aid for drones, ammunition, and armed vehicles. The comments come days after U.S. President Donald Trump met with Ukrainian and European leaders in Washington, following up on agreements from his Alaska summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin said their talks paved a path to peace and invited Trump to Moscow for a second round, while warning Kyiv and European Union not to torpedo progress. During Ukraine's celebrations, Zelensky also awarded soldiers, civilians, and foreign allies, including U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg, Sweden's Defense Minister Paul Johnson, and Germany's ambassador to Kyiv. The war in Ukraine, now in its 3rd year, continues to dominate the global stage as the search for lasting security and peace remains as urgent as ever. Reporting for Newsline World, Almar Forzuelo, SMNI News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney reviewed Ukraine's latest military weapons and technology during a defense cooperation forum in Kiev on Sunday. Footage shows the two leaders being briefed on the country's latest armament developments, including drones, missiles, and unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs. Following the tour, Zelensky held a meeting with defense ministers from allied nations to discuss continued military cooperation.
Thank you so much for your long-term support for Ukraine. Of course, Ukrainians are our families, and with all those volume of support that you provided from the very beginning of full-scale war, from this tragedy from aggression of Russia. Thank you very much that you stay with us.
During Carney's visit to Ukraine this week to commemorate the country's Independence Day, the Prime Minister announced that Canada will give military support to Ukraine under the NATO-backed Promoting Ukraine's Resilience and Liberty initiative. Hundreds of Venezuelans gathered in public squares and military posts over the weekend to heed President Nicolas Maduro's call to enlist in the Bolivarian militia, a move framed as a response to looming external threats as U.S. warships approach the nation's coastline. Paul Montebon tells us more.
Videos from Saturday shows long queues at Plaza del Libertador in Caracas, where citizens filled out enlistment forms to join the militia. Many of those who signed up were young people, voicing their commitment to defend Venezuela as Washington increases military presence in the Caribbean.
Como juventud me parece muy importante defender a la patria y la juventud. Es un legado que nos toca como venezolanos, bolivarianos, chavistas y socialistas. Los gringos han intentado durante mucho tiempo someternos, aprendernos y buscar para ellos el fin que a nosotros nos toca como venezolanos. Y nosotros tener el derecho, saber cómo defender nuestra patria, me parece muy importante este llamado al presidente con conciencia para que nosotros hagamos valer lo que nos toca como venezolanos.
The call drew a diverse crowd, including both new recruits and longtime supporters of Maduro's government, who described the movement as an act of unity.
Vemos cómo países en este momento se encuentran en guerra y nosotros aquí vivimos fiestas de paz en los llamados que hace el presidente de paz, porque esto es un llamado hacia la paz, esto es un llamado a que el mundo vea el interés de la juventud de defender su patria Venezuela.
Some recruits emphasized that their decision was not only about politics, but about heritage and national identity.
Esas son amenazas para un pueblo que a lo mejor no está seguro ni sabe lo que quiere. Pero el pueblo venezolano todos estamos seguros de que estamos preparados para defender la patria, como sea. Para eso somos hijos de ese gran hombre que es Simón Bolívar. Tenemos sangre bolivariana en las venas y esa sangre la tenemos ahí hirviendo para defender la patria.
The recruitment drive follows the U.S. announcement of a large-scale anti-narcotics operations involving ships, aircraft, missile systems, and 4,000 personnel, mostly Marines. Washington accuses Maduro and high-ranking officials of ties to drug cartels and has offered a $50 million reward for information leading to the president's capture. Caracas has rejected the allegations, dismissing them as politically motivated attempts to undermine Venezuela's sovereignty. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Paul Montebon, SMN News.
Coming up, new flames erupt in the Middle East. Israel strikes Yemen's capital, targeting the presidential palace and key Houthi sites. Later, we'll be hearing the latest on this dangerous escalation and what it means for the region. And hundreds of Venezuelans respond to President Maduro's call, joining the Bolivarian militia as tensions rise with U.S. forces approaching the coastline. Newsline World will be back after the break.
Agosto na, panahon na para ipagdiwang ang ating pagkakakilanlan bilang Pilipino. Ang buwan ng wika ay nagsimula bilang Linggo ng Wika, alinsunod sa Proclamation No. 35 ni dating Pangulong Sergio Osmeña. Ginugunita ito noon tuwing ika-27 ng Marso hanggang ikalawang araw ng Abril, kasabay ng kaarawan ni Francisco Balagtas, isa sa mga kinikilalang dakilang Pilipino sa panitikan. Pero noong 1997, pinalawak ito ni Pangulong Fidel Ramos at ginawang buwan ng Agosto sa bisa ng Proclamation No. 1041. Layunin ng selebrasyon na bigyang pansin at buhayin ang higit 180 katutubong wika sa Pilipinas, isang kayamanang dapat nating ingatan. Marami ang nagkakamali. Magkaiba ang Tagalog at Filipino. Ang Filipino ang opisyal na wika ng buong bansa, habang ang Tagalog ay isa lamang sa mga pangunahing wika. Alam niyo ba, may 8 pangunahing dialekto sa Pilipinas: Tagalog, Ilocano, Kapampangan, Pangasinense, Waray, Bicolano, Cebuano at Hiligaynon. Ang ating wika ay ating pagkakakilanlan, kaya't nararapat lamang itong pagyamanin, gamitin at ipagmalaki. Sabi nga ng ating pambansang bayani na si Jose Rizal, ang hindi magmahal sa sariling wika, daig pa ang hayop at malansang isda. Gamitin, mahalin at ipagmalaki natin ang ating sariling wika.
maging alerto at handa tuwing may bagyo. Upang manatiling ligtas, narito ang ilang mahahalagang paalala. Manatili sa loob ng bahay. Iwasan ang paglabas, lalo na kung malakas ang ulan at hangin. Mag-imbak ng pagkain at malinis na tubig. Maghanda ng emergency kit. Manatiling updated sa lagay ng panahon. Maghanda ng mga flashlight at extra baterya. Panatilihing fully charged ang iyong cellphone. I-secure ang mahahalagang dokumento sa waterproof na lalagyan. Patayin ang kuryente, gas at tubig kung may banta ng pagbaha. Alamin ang iyong local emergency hotlines. Putulin o tapyasan ang mga sanga ng puno na maaaring mabuwal sa malakas na ulan at hangin. Lumikas agad kung inabisuhan ng mga otoridad. Maging ligtas at maging handa sa panahon ng kalamidad. Ang paalalang ito ay hatid sa inyo ng SMNI.
We're back. Another battlefront erupts in the Middle East. Israel says it has bombed Houthi sites in Yemen's capital Sana'a, striking the presidential palace, power plants, and fuel depots in its latest show of force. MJ Mondihar has the latest.
A new front of conflict has opened up in the Middle East. Israel has confirmed launching a series of airstrikes in Yemen's capital Sana'a, striking what it calls Houthi terrorist infrastructure. This black smoke rose over Sana'a on Sunday as explosions echoed across the city. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the strikes targeted the presidential palace, a fuel depot, and 2 power plants, warning that the Houthis are paying a very heavy price for recent attacks on Israel. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz went further, saying the presidential palace was destroyed and that Israel is enforcing an air and naval blockade on Yemen.
מי שתוקף אותנו, אנחנו תוקפים אותו. מי שמתכנן לתקוף אותנו, אנחנו תוקפים אותו. אני חושב שהאזור כולו לומד את עוצמת היד והנחישות של מדינת ישראל. משטר הטרור החותי לומד בדרך הקשה שהוא ישלם ומשלם מחיר כבד מאוד על התוקפנות שלו נגד מדינת ישראל.
Israel's military said the targeted facilities, including the Assar and Hasis power plants, were being used for Houthi military activity. But Yemen's government condemned the strikes, saying the Hasis power plant supplied electricity to homes, children's hospital, and medical facilities, accusing Israel of causing severe destruction and power outages. Yemen's defense ministry also claimed its air defenses neutralized most of the Israeli aircraft involved. So far, the Houthi movement has not publicly commented on the strikes targeting its presidential compound. The escalation comes after the Houthis launched drone strikes on Tel Aviv, what they describe as retaliation for Israel's ongoing military operations in Gaza. With both sides trading fire across borders, analysts warn the conflict risks dragging yet another battleground into the wider Middle East war. For Ganubal of Philippines, MJ Mondihar, SMNI News.
In a video released by the Israel Defense Forces, these were the preparations of the IDF ahead of airstrikes in Yemen's capital. Let's take a quick look. We'll get back on the news. Meanwhile, at the moment in Gaza, haunting messages of children wasting away in hospital beds are laying bare the human cost of war. Doctors warn of a catastrophic collapse in child health, with severe malnutrition now threatening thousands of young lives. Let's hear 2 latest stories of malnutrition in the conflicted area from Hannah Jane Sancho. I do have to warn you, the footages you are about to see are distressing.
Disturbing images show two little girls, 6-year-old Lamia Haji and 7-year-old Mai Abu Arar, lying frail and skeletal in a hospital ward. Doctors say both are suffering from acute malnutrition, their rib cages and spines now painfully visible. A nutrition specialist at the Friends of the Patient Hospital calls it a catastrophic collapse in child health.
عندنا تقريبا حالات سوء التغذية في القسم، جميع الحالات فقدت أكثر من نصف وزنها. هنا جميع الحالات في خطر لنقص المكملات والأدوية. أحد هدول الحالات الطفلة لمياء حجي عمرها ما يقارب 6 سنوات وزنها 10 كيلو ونص، والطفلة أيضا مي أبو عرار عمرها 7 سنوات وزنها 11 كيلو. طبعا هاي الأوزان غير ملائمة لأجسام هؤلاء الأطفال ولا لعمرهم أيضا. الأطفال ما كانوا يعانوا من سوء تغذية ولا يعانوا من أي مرض صحي قبل الحرب.
Mothers describe the agony of watching their daughters waste away. One says her child has almost lost 9 kilos since the war began. Another calls it the clearest evidence of famine in Gaza. A United Nations-backed report has already classified the crisis at the highest level on the global food insecurity scale, warning that 500,000 people are at immediate risk of starvation. The Palestinian Health Ministry says 281 people have died of malnutrition and starvation so far, including more than 100 children. Israel rejects those figures, insisting there is no famine in Gaza and accusing UN agencies of relying on what it calls Hamas distortion. The warning comes as the war near its 23rd month since Hamas launched its October 7th attack. More than 62,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, alongside over 1,000 Israelis who died in the initial assault. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Hannah Jane Sancho, SMNI News.
In Sea of Shoes in Utrecht, Netherlands is mourning the lives lost in Gaza, a tribute to the children and journalists killed in the ongoing conflict, and a call to remember the human cost of war. Let's hear the story of tribute from Faith Agustin.
Thousands of shoes were displayed across Vredenburg Plain in Utrecht on Sunday in a public tribute to children and journalists killed in the ongoing war in Gaza. Footage shows rows of shoes arranged across the square alongside toys, flowers, and portraits of slain Gazan journalists. At the memorial site, activists can be seen playing the cello and reading out the names of the children that lost their lives.
We have 18,000 children's shoes. But there are in reality way more children that have been murdered. We are also commemorating the Palestinian journalists that were killed in Gaza. Almost 300 of them have been killed by Israel by now, and this is just incomprehensible. So we are sharing their stories to show also their humanity.
Activist Yali Dutch criticized what he called unequal treatment of Palestinian journalists compared to their Western counterparts and accused the Dutch government of complicity in the war through continued arms sales to Israel. Other demonstrators called for sanctions and boycotts in response to the conflict. The war began on the 7th of October 2023 when Hamas launched an attack on southern Israel that killed more than 1,000 people and resulted in more than 200 kidnappings, according to Israeli officials. Israel's subsequent military operations in Gaza have killed at least 62,000 Palestinians and injured nearly 158,000 others, according to Gaza's Ministry of Health. Faith Agustin, your citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
Coming up, a rare moment of humanity amid war. Russia and Ukraine carry out one of their largest prisoner swaps in months, reuniting soldiers and civilians with their families after years of captivity. And history made at the U.S. Open. Filipina tennis star Alex Eala stuns the crowd with a comeback win against 14th seed, her first ever Grand Slam main draw victory. From junior champion to the big stage, Eala says this one's for the books. Stay tuned for more news.
Maging alerto at handa tuwing may bagyo. Upang manatiling ligtas, narito ang ilang mahahalagang paalala. Manatili sa loob ng bahay. Iwasan ang paglabas, lalo na kung malakas ang ulan at hangin. Mag-imbak ng pagkain at malinis na tubig. Maghanda ng emergency kit. Manatiling updated sa lagay ng panahon. Maghanda ng mga flashlight at extra baterya. Panatilihing fully charged ang iyong cellphone. I-secure ang mahahalagang dokumento sa waterproof na lalagyan. Patayin ang kuryente, gas at tubig kung may banta ng pagbaha. Alamin ang iyong local emergency hotlines. Putulin o tapyasan ang mga sanga ng puno na maaaring mabuwal sa malakas na ulan at hangin. Lumikas agad kung inabisuhan ng mga otoridad. Maging ligtas at maging handa sa panahon ng kalamidad. Ang paalalang ito ay hatid sa inyo ng SMNI.
Sa tuwing bumabaha, hindi lang seguridad ang nalalagay sa alanganin, pati na rin ang kalusugan. Isa sa mga bantang dapat iwasan, ang leptospirosis. Ano nga ba ito? Ito ay isang sakit na dulot ng bakterya na tinatawag na leptospira. Nakukuha ito sa pamamagitan ng contact sa ihi ng mga hayop na may leptospira tulad ng mga daga. Pwede itong makuha sa pagsulong sa baha o pag-inom ng kontaminadong tubig. Nakakapasok ito sa katawan sa pamamagitan ng mga sugat, mata, ilong o bibig. Ang mga sintomas nito ay lagnat, mapulang mata, hirap umihi, masakit na tiyan, masakit na kalamnan, at masakit na ulo. Paano nga ba maiiwasan ang leptospirosis? Ugaliin ang tamang pagtatapon ng basura dahil ang mga maruruming lugar ang kadalasang pinupuntahan ng dagang may dalang leptospirosis. Iwasang lumusong, maglaro o lumangoy sa baha, lalo na kapag may sugat. Gumamit ng bota at gloves kung hindi maiiwasang lumusong sa tubig baha. Sugpuin ang mga daga sa bahay at panatilihin ang kalinisan sa komunidad. Hugasan ng malinis na tubig at sabon ang mga paa matapos lumusong sa baha. Sa kalinisan ng bawat isa, nakasalalay ang kaligtasan ng buong komunidad. Ang paalalang ito ay hatid sa inyo ng SMNI.
In 2005, Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy founded the Sunshine Philippines movement. A mission rooted in love for nature and nation. It began as an environmental and humanitarian initiative to reforest Mount Apo, once barren, now a thriving and beautiful place. Through his initiative, thousands of trees have been planted across the Philippines, bringing life and hope to communities. His advocacy, One Tree, One Nation, is also a movement that calls for unity in preserving the environment. Because every tree planted is a step towards unity, healing, and a greater future. Join One Tree, One Nation.
In a significant legal development, Thailand's criminal court has cleared former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra of royal defamation charges, marking a win for the controversial political figure as his family continues to face intense scrutiny. Anissa de Guzman for the updates.
A criminal court here in Thailand has dismissed a royal insult case against former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. The ruling marks the first of several legal battles involving the country's most influential political family. The case stemmed from a 2015 interview Thaksin gave to foreign media. Judges ruled the evidence did not show he defamed or threatened the monarchy, an offense that carries a penalty of up to 15 years in prison. Thaksin, 76, appeared in court in Bangkok wearing a yellow necktie, the color linked to the monarchy. He smiled as he left the courthouse where around 150 supporters had gathered. Thaksin remains a central figure in Thai politics despite years of exiles and past convictions. He served part of his sentence under hospital detention before being released on parole, with his original 8-year term reduced to 1 year by royal pardon. The ruling comes as the Shinawatra family faces more scrutiny. Next week, the Constitutional Court is set to decide on the future of his daughter, suspended Prime Minister Petongtan Shinawatra, who faces dismissal over an alleged ethics violation. Another verdict for Thaksin is expected in September on whether his hospital detention counts as time served for a corruption-related conviction. Supporters outside the court welcomed the decision, saying Thaksin remains committed to the people. I'm Anissa de Guzman, your global citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
The main suspect in Argentina's deadly fentanyl case linked to nearly 100 deaths in Buenos Aires has been transferred to court custody to a penitentiary facility. Let's hear the latest on this from Jillian Gutierrez.
Ariel Garcia Furfaro, owner of HLB Parma and accused of orchestrating the distribution of adulterated fentanyl, was escorted by airport security police in recent days after giving his preliminary statement at the federal court in La Plata. Investigators say Furfaro, arrested on the 20th of August, faces charges under the narcotics law, including aggravated homicide for allegedly overseeing the logistics of fentanyl distribution that left at least 96 people dead and hundreds hospitalized in early 2022. His lawyer Gaston Marano told reporters Furfaro managed a chain of employees and specialists under state regulatory checks, but stopped short of detailing his client's direct role in the case. Authorities described the tragedy as one of Argentina's worst drug-related public health crises. If convicted, Furfaro could face 10 to 25 years in prison. Meanwhile, families of the victims continue to demand justice, calling for accountability not only from street-level dealers, but also from higher-ranking figures within the drug network. Jillian Gutierrez, your citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
Controversy erupts at one of the UK's biggest music festivals after an Irish band was cut off mid-performance for waving a Palestinian flag. The fallout has sparked a wave of boycotts and raised serious questions about censorship and artistic freedom. Meanwhile, she's been a Hollywood staple since childhood, but it turns out we've all been saying her name wrong. Actress Kirsten Dunst is setting the record straight. Sort of. Here's Alisa Torres for our Showbiz News.
Irish folk group the Merry Wallopers sparked outrage Friday when they raised a Palestinian flag and chanted "Free Palestine" during their set, only to have their sound abruptly cut. Footage shows a crew member removing the flag moments before the interruption. Festival organizers initially blamed the chant, calling it discriminatory, but later admitted it was the flag that led to the shutdown, apologizing and pledging a donation to Palestinian humanitarian aid. But the apology didn't stop backlash. On Saturday, indie band The Last Dinner Party, rock group The Academic, and Cliffords pulled out in protest. Statements called the incident political censorship and criticized the suppression of free speech. The controversy has left fans and artists debating the fine line between political expression and festival rules. Bring it on? More like say it right. Actress Kirsten Dunst has revealed that most people, including fans, co-workers, and even entire film crews, still mispronounce her name. In a recent TikTok shared by Town & Country, the Oscar-nominated star addressed the long-standing confusion.
Correcting someone on the pronunciation of your name. I mean, everyone messes up my name, so I give up. I don't care. I'm like, I'll answer Kirsten, which is how you say my name, but I don't blame people. Like in England, they don't really say my name right. Like on the last set, everyone was saying my name wrong, but there was like Swedish people and people from Hungary, and like you just give up.
The correct pronunciation It's Kirsten, not Kirsten, a common mistake that's followed her throughout her decades-long career. Luckily, 2 people who did it right are her sons, Ennis 7 and James 4, whom she shares with fellow actor Jesse Plemons. Dunst also opened up about the recent scare involving James, who fell ill while the family was in Budapest earlier this year during filming. Plemons had to fly home to Los Angeles with the kids, but Dunst reassured fans that everyone is fine now. As for what's next, the beloved actress will return to the big screen this fall in Roofman, opposite Channing Tatum. The film tells a bizarre true story of a former Army Ranger who turns to robbing McDonald's restaurants by cutting through their roofs. Roofman hits theaters October 10, and now that we know how to say her name, we'll be cheering for Kirsten Dunst the right way. This is Alisa Torres, your Citizen correspondent, bringing you the latest show buzz.
For our latest sports, Filipina tennis star Eala has made history at the US Open, becoming the first from the Philippines to win a Grand Slam main draw match. Meanwhile, a basketball card featuring Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant has set a new world record at auction. Here's Carlo de la Peña for more of the sports news.
20-year-old Eala became the first Filipino in the Open era to win a Grand Slam main draw match. Eala stunned 14th seed Clara Towson in the opening round, mounting a comeback from 1-5 down in the final set before clinching a thrilling 6-3, 2-6, 7-6 victory. The battle lasted 2 hours and 36 minutes, with the New York crowd rallying behind her comeback. Proudly carrying the Philippine flag, Eala said the win was one for the books. Already a US Open Junior champion in 2022, she now looks to reach the third round of a slam for the first time. Meanwhile, an anonymous buyer has paid $12.9 million for a rare basketball card signed by Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, setting a new record as the most expensive sports card ever sold. The 2007 to 2008 Upper Deck Dual Logoman Autographs card, auctioned by Heritage Auctions in the US, includes photos, autographs, and NBA logo patches from both legends. Originally valued at about $6 million, the card drew 82 bids and ultimately sold for more than double its estimate. The sales broke the previous record of $12.6 million held by a 1952 Mickey Mantle baseball card. It now stands as the second most valuable piece of sports memorabilia overall, behind Babe Ruth's 1932 World Series jersey, which sold for $24.1 million in 2024. Reporting for Newsline World, this is Carlo de la Peña, bringing you the latest sports news.
A rare moment of cooperation between Moscow and Kiev. Both sides have carried out one of their largest prisoner exchanges in recent months. Tears, flags, and emotional reunions take place on both sides of the front line as Russian and Ukrainian prisoners of war are now back home. This report. Russia's defense ministry confirmed that 146 Russian servicemen have returned home after being freed in a swap with Ukraine. Officials say the exchange was conducted on a 146 for 146 basis, with Ukrainian prisoners of war also handed back to Kiev. Among those released to Russia were 8 civilians from the Kursk region. Video showed the freed soldiers waving national flags, chanting and speaking to loved ones over the phone. One Russian serviceman described the moment as indescribable, while others shared how thoughts of home, family, and letters from loved ones kept them going through captivity.
Облегчение, счастье, радость, не знаю, непередаваемые ощущения. После плена это единственное, что я хотел. Просто замечательное ощущение.
Я почувствовал себя свободным в своей стране. Огромная эйфория. Соскучился по родным и близким. Всем передаю привет. Сыну, брату, все, кто меня знает. На передовую всем тоже привет, кто меня видит.
Жена писала через Красный Крест. Эти письма меня согревали, были фотографии. Было очень много близких, грубо говоря, друзей, которые поддерживали не унывать, держаться. Мы держались вместе и как бы нормально выдержали все.
Russian officials say the released troops were first taken to Belarus, where they received medical and psychological support before being transferred to military hospitals in Russia for full rehabilitation. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, dozens of soldiers and civilians also returned home. Video shows Ukrainian posts arriving on 2 buses, greeted by soldiers at an undisclosed location, waving national flags, some breaking down in tears as they called their families.
Знаєте, хочу подякувати сьогодні просто всіх тих, хто приймався звільненням цих хлопців, які сьогодні вперше за останні 3,5 майже роки вперше побачили оцю зелень, оці цвітучі наші дерева. Тому я дякую за цей подарунок. Я завжди думав, який у мене буде яка дата буде мого другого дня народження. От. Ну, так дуже гарно співпало, що другий день народження у мене саме 24 серпня.
Ukrainian officials have not confirmed exact numbers, but reports say 8 civilians were also freed, including 2 journalists and former Kherson mayor Volodymyr Mykolenko. President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed the exchange, thanking all mediators involved. The swap coincided with Ukraine's 34th Independence Day, adding emotional weight to the homecomings. In recent months, both sides have conducted several exchanges, including seriously ill soldiers and individuals under 25, as well as the bodies of fallen servicemen. As the war nears its 3rd year, prisoner swaps remain one of the very few points of contact between Moscow and Kiev, a fragile but vital channel for families on both sides, still waiting to see their loved ones again.
Despite immense challenges, the light of transformation once again proves to be unstoppable. In Binalonan, Pangasinan, numerous individuals once trapped in vices and destructive lifestyles have embraced a renewed life of hope and faith through the message of Pastor Apollo Sikibuloy, marked by recent baptismal rites. This story from Creselin Catarong.
Many, rising from the darkest moments in life may seem impossible. But for 30-year-old Jeffrey Pagio from Bacolor, Pampanga, he has proven that nothing is impossible with the Almighty Father, especially when the heart learns to repent and submit. He did not hide his past. He became addicted to illegal drugs, a vice that weighed heavily not just on himself, but on his wife and child who depended on him. He admitted that he tried many times to change, but always found himself falling back worse than before.
Yung buhay ko po noon ay sinasabi ko nga po na ako po noon, inaamin ko, nasa kadiliman po ako. Ito po, nakakayaman po. Noon ay meron po akong bisyo, yung bisyo na ipinagbabawal na gamot. Pero nasa puso ko po na gusto ko pong magbago at magbago po sa sarili ko po. Pero hindi ko po alam kung paano. Magbabago po siguro 1 week. Pinakamatagal na yung 2 weeks. Pero pagkatapos nun, mas malala pa po yung kahantungan. So, naguguluhan po ako kung paano. Paano ba magbago? Ang hirap magbago, sabi ko. Sa puso ko, gusto kong magbago.
Then came a series of painful trials. The death of his mother-in-law and his child falling ill. It was during these moments that he searched even more for light. Through a friend, he was introduced to the preachings of Pastor Apollo Sikibuloy. At first, he was full of doubts. But as he continued to hear messages about faith and prayer, something began to move in him. The message of the Father started to penetrate his heart.
Doon ko po nakilala yung isang kaibigan ko po. At pinakilala niya po sa akin yung si Pastor Apollo Sikibuloy na pinakilala niyang siya ay appointed son of God. Pero mga lumipas na araw, may mga kakaiba na po na nangyari sa akin na hindi ko maipaliwanag. Nahawakan ko yung cellphone ko, parang tinatype ng pangalan ko, Pastor Apollo Sikibuloy. So umahanap ako ng, sino ba itong si Pastor? Sino ba yan? Sabi ko. Then, one time na-type ko sa cellphone yung may nakita ako na Pastor Apollo Sikibuloy, ACQ Classics. Yun po, napakinggan ko po yung mga pangaral niya. Mayroon po akong napakinggan na pangaral niya talagang tumatago sa aking puso at sa isip po. Yung sinabi niya na hindi ako yung pagtiwala ko noon, hindi pa totaling buo. Pero nung sinabi niyang magdasal ka, sabi niya,
From there, real change began. One by one, his vices disappeared. The life once filled with confusion and sin was replaced with peace and clarity of mind and heart. Like Jeffrey, 37-year-old James Castillo from Binalonan, Pangasinan, also found peace after troubled life filled with painful experiences that tested him and his family. He admitted he had seen negative news reports about Pastor Apollo, but instead of being swayed, he continued listening and clung to the messages. Eventually, he found clarity and strengthened his conviction to defend the Kingdom Nation against false accusations.
Si Pastor Kibuloy, alam ko naman po na mabuti po siyang tao. Napapanood ko naman po lahat yung mga video niya. Tapos yung mga ginagawa sa kanya ngayon na mga false accusation kay Pastor Kibuloy, na sana tigilan na nila yon. Kasi masama din sa kalooban ko yun eh. Yung paparatangan ka ng mga pawang kasinungalingan. Si Jesus Christ nga po, di ba, nangyari din sa kanya yon. Bakit hindi mangyayari sa atin na mga tao ako? Tapos nangyari din kay Pastor Kibuloy.
Among the youth, change is also evident. Crystal Kinagon, a student from Malasiki, Pangasinan, once struggled with drinking and negative influences. But when she heard the messages of Pastor Apollo, she felt a divine power touch her heart. She described the experience as completely transformative, moving from a life of being lost to one renewed in repentance and holiness.
Simula nakarinig po ako ng mga mensahe niya po, parang tumagos po sa puso ko, tapos naintindihan ko po siya. Hindi tulad po dati sa pinanggalingan ko pong simbahan na parang wala lang po sa akin, hindi ko po na-feel yung parang maganda po na nararamdaman po. Yung mensahe po na natandaan ko po sa mensahe ni Pastor, yung sa pagsisisi.
Just like Crystal, Princess Eliza Velarde from San Carlos, Pangasinan also experienced a turning point after being exposed to negative influences at an early age. Today, not only has she broken free from her old ways, but she is always actively involved in the Kingdom Nation's environmental advocacy efforts. From tree planting to cleanup drives, she is now a living testimony of compassion and love, as taught by the good pastor.
Para po sa iyo, Pastor, maraming salamat po kasi hindi lang po physically, mentally nakatulong po, kundi sa buong nature, ganun po. Kasi dati po, sumasama din po ako sa mga pagtatanim, pagki-clean up drive. Sobrang laking tulong po yun para sa nature natin.
James, Jeffrey, Crystal, and Princess are just a few among the thousands who have responded to the message of repentance. They were among those recently baptized in the North Central Luzon, a historic gathering that proved the faith of the children of God remains strong even amid persecution and false accusations. They expressed deep gratitude to the Father and to the appointed Son who became the bridge toward true transformation, peace, and a new beginning.
So, nagpapasalamat po tayo sa dakilang Ama sapagkat marami po ang naliwanagan sa mga pangangaral po ng ating pinakamamahal na pastor sapagkat alam po natin na pawang kabutihan ang kanyang ipinapalaganap. So itong lahat na naniwala ngayon at na nagsisi, nag-decide na magpabaptize sa pangalan ng ating dakilang Ama.
They hold firm to the messages delivered by Pastor Apollo, which have led to true change in their hearts, minds, and entire lives. In the midst of chaos, they deepen their faith even more, standing boldly for truth and righteousness.
So, ang tanging paraan lang po pala is yung pagsisisi. Pagsisisi na sabihin mo sa Ama na magdasal ka ng taimtim, na hindi na yung kalooban mo, kundi yung kalooban niya ang mangyayari sa buhay mo. Simula po noon, nung sinunod ko yung mga pangaral ni Pastor, ayun po, aminado po ko na ito na po. Sabi ko, ito na yung katagumpayan ko. Sabi ko, yung dating bisyo ko, naalis sa puso at isip ko, naging malinis ako. Yung kalooban po ng Ama, yung ginagawa ko po ngayon. So, nagpapasalamat po ako na merong isang tao, kagaya ni Pastor Apollo Sikipuloy, kahit maraming mga kasinungalingan na pag-aakusa sa kanya, pang-uusig, kahit nasasaktan po yung puso ko, ako po ang nasasaktan sa tuwing anong mga kasiraan na sinasabi sa kanya.
Malugod silang naririto, kasama po natin lahat at marami dyan ang maraming mga bisyo. Marami dyan ang meron talagang mga hindi magandang gawain sa kanilang mapumuhay. Subalit nang mapakinggan nila ang ating mahal na pastor, doon po nagpasimula yung bagong pananaw nila na meron palang isang tao na inaakusahan ng mga negatibong bagay, subalit ng napagtanto nila sa pamagitan ng ating pagpapakilala sa ating mahal na pastor, sila ngayon ay nandirito na talagang sumuko, na hindi pinilit, kundi bukas sa kanilang mga loob na talagang nagpabautismo na sa pangalan nating dakilang Ama.
Their firm decision to accept the message of the appointed Son is a powerful testimony of unwavering faith in the face of all the turmoil society faces today. This event not only brought together children of God from different parts of the region, but also marked the simultaneous baptismal rites of the kingdom of Jesus Christ across the nation, a testament to the continued growth, strength, and unity of the kingdom nation, even amidst the greatest trials we face. For God and for my beloved Philippines, this has been Cresceline Catarong, SMNI News.
A story that proves even the smallest victories can carry the biggest lessons. For one family watching their son with Down syndrome take a simple step toward independence turned into a moment they'll never forget. Let's find out more about this with Valdivina Gracia.
Get a small Slurpee and you just give them the $2 and they'll give you change and you come, okay?
There's that.
Okay.
For parents of children with Down syndrome, milestones can come with extra challenges and even bigger triumphs. That was the case for young Jack, who recently made his family beam with pride. With a Slurpee in hand and a smile as bright as his spirit, Jack walked out of his own, independent, confident, and brimming with joy. His parents, who admit to often worrying and holding back, say the moment was more than just a quick errand. It was a breakthrough, a lesson that their child is capable of more than they sometimes believe. In Jack's simple act of independence, his family, and many others, are reminded of a powerful truth. Every achievement, no matter how small, can be a victory worth celebrating. Reporting for Newsline World, this is Valdivina Gracia, SMNI News.
We end, may you be inspired with the words of the Son. Everything you want to do, if you are committed, if you are consistent, you will succeed. And that's all for this edition of Newsline World. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Angel Pastor. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
This is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.